The flickering fluorescent lights cast a sickly glow over the deserted subway platform. Maria clutched her worn-out coat tighter around her slender frame, her dark curls tumbling over anxious eyes that darted toward every shadow. The cold air was thick with the scent of damp concrete and distant exhaust fumes. A few feet away, an older man named Henry leaned heavily on his cane, his weathered face etched with lines of solitude and regret. Beside him, a teenager with electric blue hair and a defiant gaze tapped her foot to an unheard rhythm, earbuds firmly in place. Across the platform, a suited businessman adjusted his tie nervously, his polished shoes squeaking against the grimy tiles. The distant rumble of the approaching train was a welcome sound, yet an undercurrent of unease rippled through the air, a feeling that tonight something was terribly off. The train screeched to a halt, doors sliding open with a reluctant groan. The passengers shuffled inside, scattering among the worn seats. Maria sat near the middle, her eyes briefly meeting the businessman's. His forced smile did little to mask the tension etched across his face. The teenager slouched in a corner, dismissing the world with a blast of music. Henry settled across from Maria, his grip on the cane tightening as the carriage lurched forward. The city lights outside blurred into a cascade of neon and darkness. The overhead lights flickered, casting sporadic shadows that danced along the graffiti-covered walls. A sudden jolt caused the lights to dim, then stabilize, but an oppressive silence had already settled among them, each passenger lost in their private mire of fears and suspicions. Without warning, the train ground to an abrupt stop between stations. The lights flickered once more before plunging the carriage into pitch black. Startled gasps broke the silence. Maria's heartbeat thundered in her ears as she fumbled for her phone, but no light came from the screen. "Everyone okay?" the businessman called out, his voice strained. Before anyone could answer, a slow clap echoed through the darkness, followed by a low, chilling chuckle. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the carriage in a hellish red glow. Standing at the far end was a figure clad in a filthy clown suit, its once bright colors muted under layers of grime. The clown's face was a grotesque mask of smeared makeup, eyes gleaming with a malevolent delight that sent a spike of terror through the passengers. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," the clown purred, twirling a rusted knife between gloved fingers. "Welcome to tonight's entertainment." The teenager ripped out her earbuds, eyes wide with disbelief. Henry's cane clattered to the floor as his hands shook uncontrollably. "What do you want?" the businessman demanded, trying to muster authority. The clown tilted his head, a sinister smile stretching across cracked lips. "So many questions," he mused. "But let's make this simple. To survive, all you have to do is play my game." Maria felt a cold sweat trickle down her spine. "And if we refuse?" she managed to whisper. The clown's laughter ricocheted off the metal walls. "Refusal isn't an option, dear. The game has already begun." The clown's game was a twisted maze of riddles and moral dilemmas, each more horrifying than the last. He forced them to confront their deepest fears and darkest secrets. The businessman, who introduced himself shakily as Thomas, was compelled to admit to fraudulent schemes that had ruined lives. The teenager, Lily, confessed to betraying her only friend, leading to a tragedy she couldn't erase. Henry broke down as he spoke of his estranged son, a rift he had been too proud to mend. Maria felt the clown's gaze pierce through her as she grappled with her own secret, the guilt of abandoning her terminally ill mother to chase a career abroad. Each revelation was met with the clown's mocking applause, his delight feeding off their pain. As the horrific ordeal dragged on, a sinister pattern emerged. With each confession, the clown seemed to grow stronger, his movements more fluid, his voice more commanding. The passengers realized that their terror was his sustenance. "We have to stop playing his game," Maria whispered urgently. "He's using our fear against us." Thomas nodded, desperation flashing in his eyes. "But how? He's in control." Lily glanced at the emergency exit, her rebellious spirit reigniting. "We outnumber him. If we work together." Henry placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "He's armed and unhinged. We need a plan." The group huddled closer, drawing strength from each other's resolve. United by their common goal, they began to devise a way out of the nightmare. Their opportunity came when the clown became momentarily distracted by a sudden jolt of the train. Acting on a silent cue, Thomas lunged forward, attempting to wrestle the knife from the clown's grip. Lily joined in, using her bag to strike at the clown's knees. Henry, mustering strength beyond his years, blocked the aisle with his cane to prevent the clown's escape. Maria seized the emergency communication device, desperately calling for help, but only static answered her pleas. The clown fought back with terrifying ferocity, his laughter now a manic screech. "You think you can win?" he snarled, eyes wild. The struggle intensified, but the passengers' combined effort began to overpower him. For a fleeting moment hope flickered in their hearts. Just as they gained the upper hand, the train lights surged brilliantly before bursting in a shower of sparks. The carriage was plunged back into darkness. In the chaos, the clown broke free, his silhouette barely visible as he retreated toward the driver's cabin. A haunting melody played over the intercom, a twisted rendition of a lullaby that sent chills down their spines. "He's going to crash the train," Henry realized with dawning horror. Determined, they pursued him, navigating the darkened carriage with urgency. Bursting into the cabin, they found it empty, controls smashed, wires sparking dangerously. The clown's mocking voice echoed around them. "Game over." Panic surged as the train began to accelerate, the walls rattling violently. Maria frantically searched the controls, her fingers bleeding from jagged edges. "There has to be a manual override," she cried. Lily spotted a lever marked emergency brake, and without hesitation pulled it with all her might. The train shuddered, metal screeching as sparks flew. The momentum hurled them against the walls, pain exploding in their bodies. With a final agonizing lurch, the train ground to a stop. Silence descended, broken only by their ragged breaths. Bruised and battered, they stumbled out into a dimly lit maintenance tunnel. The clown was nowhere in sight. As they made their way toward a distant light, the weight of the night's horrors pressed heavily upon them. Emerging onto a deserted platform, the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness. Sirens wailed in the distance, a chorus of approaching relief. They collapsed onto benches, strangers no longer, bound by a shared nightmare. Thomas broke the silence, his voice hoarse. "We survived, but he'll be back. People like that don't just disappear." Maria looked toward the horizon, determination hardening her gaze. "Then we'll be ready. We're not alone anymore." Lily nodded, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. Henry placed a hand over his heart, a silent vow passing between them. As the sun rose, casting golden light over the weary survivors, they knew that while the scars of the night would remain, so too would the strength they found in facing the darkness together.